We're in Parshah Mikeitz. We learned last week that Yosef was sold to Egypt and he was working for Potiphar until his wife, Potiphar's wife, accused him that he wanted to be with her, whereas really she begged him and Yosef refused. And Potiphar threw him into prison. He was in prison for 12 years. And this is the end of 12 years. Now, at this point, Yosef is 30 years old. And at the end of 2 years, which means these are last 2 years of his prison, end of 12 years in prison, Paro was dreaming. And behold, out of the river there emerged 7 cows. And there were another 7 cows that ate the first. The first ones were beautiful, the second ones were skinny, and the second set of 7 cows ate up the first. And then Paro awoke. He was surprised, but he fell asleep again. And he dreamt a second dream. And he saw 7 stalks of grain. 7 ears of grain on a single stalk. The ear of grain is the top part where the kernels are. And usually there is only 1 ear of grain on each stalk. Here he saw a stalk with 7 of them, like a menorah. Mm-hmm. And they were healthy kernels, beautiful. And then he saw on the same stalk, after them, were growing 7 ears of grain, but they were thin, empty, struck by wind. And these 7 thin ears of grain swallowed the healthy ones. And again, Paro awoke and was surprised. Twice the dream repeated itself. He waited until the morning, and he called all the necromancers of Egypt and all its wise men, but none could interpret them for Paro. Paro saw 2 dreams, and the necromancers, they thought that they are 2 dreams with 2 messages. But Paro understood that this was 1 dream. And so automatically, without even listening to the meaning of their explanation, he knew that they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about because they were trying to interpret it as 2 different messages. He didn't know what to do. So one of his servants, the butler, who used to be with Yosef in prison, he told Paro about Yosef. And he said, there with us was a Hebrew youth, a slave of the chamberlain of butchers. And he interpreted dreams for us. And it happened exactly like he said. So Paro sent and summoned Yosef, and Yosef was brought to Paro. After 12 years in prison, he comes out to the light of day. And from prison, he goes straight to the palace, stands in front of the king. Of course, he was washed, changed his clothing, got a haircut. Paro related the dream to Yosef, and Yosef gave his interpretation. The dream of Paro is a single one. We're on page 227. Right away, Yosef knew. The dream of Paro is a single one. Right away, Paro understood that Yosef knows what he's talking about. What God is about to do, he has told to Paro. In Pasuk 29, behold, 7 years are coming, a great abundance throughout the land. Then 7 years of famine will arise after them, and the abundance will be forgotten. And the reason for the repetition is because the matter stands ready before God, and God is hastening to accomplish it. So keep in mind, if something happens in your life, that's a message from Hashem. And if it happens again, it means it's a stronger message. It's a more powerful message. It's about to happen. And not only that, Yosef offers advice. Paro didn't ask him for advice, he only asked him for interpretation. But Yosef says, now, let Paro, this is Pasuk 33, let Paro seek out a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. And Pasuk 35, let them gather all the food of those approaching good years, and let them amass grain under Paro's authority. And the food will be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine, so that the land will not perish. The matter appeared good in Paro's eyes, and Paro said, could we find another like him, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? So Paro liked this, that he's smart and he likes to give advice. He is not only telling you what problem you have and let you deal with it on your own, he tries to help. He takes initiative. So Paro said to Yosef, Pasuk 40, you shall be in charge of my palace. Now this is the third manager position for Yosef. He was manager of Potiphar's house, he was manager in prison, and now he is manager of the entire country. And Paro removed his ring, the symbol of leadership, and put it on Yosef's hand. And Pasuk 45, Paro called Yosef's name Tzafnat Paneach, which means the one who reveals hidden secrets. And he gave him Osnat as a wife. Right? And we know who Osnat is. She is the daughter of Dinah. So Yosef married his niece. Potiphar didn't have children because he was every minister in Paro's court, they would castrate him, so they couldn't have their own children. So he adopted Osnat, because Osnat was without parents. She was basically sent away from Yaakov's home, and he adopted her. Now Yosef was 30 years old when he stood before Paro. And Pasuk 48, he gathered all food of the 7 years. How did he do it? He told the people, you're going to have plenty now, but don't waste everything. Divide it into 5 parts. Give me 1 part out of 5, give me 20%, and you eat the 80. Do whatever you want. If you want, store it on your own, but give 20% to the government. And so for 7 years, he collected 20% from people to last for the years of famine, so that people can survive on those 20%. From here we learn that, number one, this was a year of plenty, so the land produced more than usual. And also people, let's say people used all this 80%. They used double as much as on a regular year. So let's say on a regular year they would get the 40%. Now they got 80 and they used it up. Even though some people saved some, but it all got rotten. And now, during the years of famine, instead of using 40%, you would only use 20%, half of the normal. So we learn from this that in years of plenty, person's appetite increases, his spending is increased, 2 times more than he spends usually. But in years of hunger, famine, people can survive on much less. Even half of what they normally eat is going to be fine. But that just shows you that our body is strong. And if we need, we can put our body through a little bit of stress and we can survive on much less than we usually do. I mean, we can probably be fine with just half of what we normally eat. I'm going to be totally fine. What a normal American eats, you can probably be perfectly healthy with just half of what you eat. And the same with everything else. If you cut your wardrobe in half, you cut your even probably sleeping time in half, you can probably survive. No, especially if you do more exercise. So you don't have to be scared. If anything happens, you'll be fine. You'll just lower your standards and you'll pass right through it. As opposed to a person who is scared and he doesn't want to feel any discomfort. He's gonna suffer and he might even break and die when he faces any discomfort. Right? So sometimes it's beneficial to go through certain artificial stress to see how much you're capable of. And we do it a little bit. For example, we fast a few times a year to show ourselves it's okay, I don't have to eat breakfast first thing in the morning. I can wait. Maybe a few hours I can wait. I can, let's say it's Sunday, and I go to synagogue, and I pray Shacharit. And it's okay. After Shacharit, I can stay and learn a little bit. Shacharit finishes 9 o'clock. I don't have to have breakfast 9 o'clock. It's okay if I wait until 10. It's okay if I wait until 11. And I learn for an hour, or I learn for 2 hours. A person who is weak, not because he's weak, because he convinces himself that he's weak, he's going to say, it's dangerous for my life. I have to eat immediately. So he is going to not achieve so much in life. Because he's always going to be running to take care of his body and not do anything that even slightly poses risk to his body. But that's what Yosef told them from the beginning. 20% is going to be enough for you to survive. In the meantime, during those 7 years, he had 2 sons, Menashe and Ephraim. The 7 years of plenty came and left. Now the famine starts. The 7 years of famine began. When all the land of Egypt hungered, the people cried out to Paro for bread. So Paro said to them, go to Yosef. If you don't have food, you didn't take care of yourself, you didn't save food, now go to Yosef. They said to him, we did take care of ourselves, we saved, but our food got rotten. So he said, then all the more so go to Yosef. That means that he's in control of whose food gets rotten and whose food doesn't. He is the one, Paro understood, he is the one who caused all your food to rot. And none of Yosef's food rotted. And our sages say that when people came to Yosef, he said to them, I will only give you food if you circumcise yourself first. Right? And they said, why should we do it? And he said, if you don't want, go complain to Paro. They went to Paro and they said, Paro, Yosef tells us that we should do circumcision. Paro said, do you have another choice? And they said, no. He said, that means you have to circumcise.
What was the goal of Yosef?
What was the goal of Yosef? He was preparing the ground for his family. He knew that eventually the Jewish people are destined to go to Egypt. And he didn't want the Jewish people to be made fun of when they come. So like this, when they came, all the Egyptians are also circumcised. And also, I guess he wanted them to not be so much into their own body, not to run after their desires. And the plan worked. The whole Egypt became circumcised, at least for that generation. Pasuk 56, when the famine spread over all the face of the earth, not only in Egypt, but all that region, Middle East and Africa, was affected. Joseph opened all the containers and sold provisions to Egypt. And then Pasuk 57, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy provisions. So Joseph had enough food, not only for Egyptians, but for all the surrounding countries. That means that they ate even less. They probably only ate 10%, and that was enough. Now, page 233, Yaakov perceived that Egypt had food, and Yaakov said to his sons, end of second line, there are provisions in Egypt. Go down there and purchase for us. So Joseph's brothers, 10 of them, all except Binyamin, went down to buy grain. But Binyamin, Yaakov did not send, because he said, this is the only son I have left from Rachel. And something already happened to his mother. She died. Something already happened to his brother. He disappeared. So I don't want anything to happen to him. There's already a pattern. So Joseph's brothers came and they bowed to Yosef, to the ground. Pasuk 7. Yosef saw his brothers and he recognized him, because when he left they were older. They already had beards, and even though now this is 22 years later, he recognized them. But he acted like stranger toward them, and he spoke to them harshly. And he devised a test for them to check if they still hate him, if they still hate Binyamin because he is also son of Rachel. He wanted to know, did they hate me because I'm son of a different mother, or because I did something to invoke their anger towards me? So he made this test. Yosef recognized them, but they did not recognize him, because when he left, he was only 17 years old. His beard was not fully grown. He was still young. Now he's an adult. At this point, he is 39 years old. He was 30 when he came to Paro, then 7 years of plenty, and then 2 years of famine.
Also, in the previous statement, it says that the brothers bowed down to Yosef, right? But they looked at him as Pharaoh, and Pharaoh considered himself as a god.
No. Paro was still Paro.
Yeah.
He considered himself God. Yosef was a viceroy. He was the prime minister.
Okay, so he didn't consider himself as
No,
God.
he didn't consider himself God. People knew he's not God. He was just a powerful man.
Because, Jewish people, even though this was before giving them the Torah, were not supposed to bow down.
Yes,
So-
yeah. And fortunately, it was not Paro who was standing here. Yosef recalled the dreams. So he said to them, you're spies. Now, he's going to accuse them that they're spies. And in Pasuk 15, he tells them how they can prove that they are not. By this shall you be tested. You will not leave here until your youngest brother comes here. Since brothers volunteered their information, they said that we're not spies, we're all one family, and we still have one brother, younger brother with our father. So Yosef said, okay. That's exactly what Yosef wanted, because in order to fulfill the dream, all 11 brothers had to bow down to him. And also through this, he would be able to test. Once they bring Binyamin, I'm going to make it look like Binyamin is guilty, and I'm going to take him for myself and see if they defend him. Or they're going to say, oh, good, we don't need him around us. So, Pasuk 21, the brothers said to one another, "Indeed, we're guilty concerning our brother." Now they regret that they sold him, even though they still feel they're right, because he deserved it, but they feel that they should have found another solution to it. Maybe they should have spoken to their father and discussed the matter, not taken the matter into their own hands. Maybe they should have been more compassionate and gave him some punishment that would be less harsh as selling him into slavery. Now Yosef lets them go, and he chooses Shimon as a hostage, and he imprisons him. Pasuk 25, Yosef commanded that to return their money. He tells his servants, give them grain and return the money. Why? To scare them, to show that he is really in control of everything. And that's what happens. They loaded their donkeys, they departed from there. Pasuk 29, they came to Yaakov and they told him what happened to them. And Pasuk 33, they said, the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, Pasuk 34, bring your youngest brother to me. And Pasuk 35, they discovered the money. As they were emptying their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. When they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were terrified. Because they understand someone must have put it in there in order to accuse us that we stole the money and that we didn't pay for the food that we took. We stole the food and we stole the money. Now, what are we going to do? We still need food, so we still need to go to Egypt. We still need to go to Egypt to rescue our brother Shimon. And there is accusation against us. What are we going to do? Reuven told his father in Pasuk 37, put him in my care, and I will return him to you. But Yaakov said, my son shall not go down with you. Yaakov was too scared. He was willing to sacrifice Shimon, just not to let them take Binyamin there. Because now, there is no guarantee. Maybe they're going to take Binyamin, and they're going to lose Shimon and Binyamin, and maybe they're going to lose all of them, because maybe now they're going to be accused, and they're going to be enslaved, all 11 of them. However, Pasuk 2 in chapter 43 says, when they finished eating the provisions, their father said to them, go back and buy some more food. Now Yehuda spoke and said, we can't go without Binyamin. If you are ready to send our brother with us, we will go. Pasuk 8, Yehuda said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me. Pasuk 9, I will personally guarantee him. And Israel agrees, and he sends gifts to Yosef. Israel, their father, said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take of the land's glory in your baggage and bring it down to the man as a tribute. Means what the land of Israel is famous for. A bit of balsam, a bit of honey, wax, lotus, pistachios, and almonds. And take with you double the money, and the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Which means take triple the money. Number one, to return the money that you got back. Maybe it was a mistake. And plus double money in case food prices went up. Because he understands in times of famine, prices for food rise. Pasuk 13, take your brother and arise, return to the man. And may God grant you mercy. page 243, Pasuk 16. Yosef saw Binyamin, so he said to the one in charge of his house, bring the man into the house and have meat slaughtered and prepare it, because they're going to eat with me. Now this is becoming even more puzzling to the brothers. Instead of accusing them as spies, now Yosef is inviting them for a meal, a festive meal. They are brought to Yosef's house, Pasuk 18, but the man became frightened when they were brought to Yosef's house, and they said, because of the money replaced in our sacks originally, are we being brought so that a charge can be fabricated against us? Pasuk 19, they approached the man who was in charge of Yosef's house, and they said, if you please, my lord. And they explained what happened, that we came to buy food, and someone put the money in our sacks, and we brought the money back. Please take it. Pasuk 23, this man, whose name was Menashe, he was the son of Yosef, he calms them down, and he said, peace with you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father has put a hidden treasure in your sacks. Your payment had reached me. And he brought Shimon out to them. So now seemingly everything is good. They came into the house. In Pasuk 26, when Yosef came to the house, they brought the tribute to him, and they prostrated themselves to him. Now the dream is fulfilled. 11 brothers bow down to him. Pasuk 29, then Yosef lifted up his eyes, and he saw his brother Binyamin. And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Yosef could not hold himself anymore, so he went into his room and wept there. He washed his face and went out. Pasuk 32, they served him separately and them separately, and the Egyptians who ate with him separately. So they had 3 tables, one for Yosef, one for brothers, and one for all the other Egyptians. And explains why. For the Egyptians could not bear to eat food with the Hebrews, it being loathsome to Egyptians. Why? Because Yosef, as well as the brothers, ate meat. And the Egyptians were serving the sheep. Different times of the year, different months, they would serve different constellation, with their chief being the sheep. But the month of Nisan, the spring month, was the main month when the sheep, the god of sheep, was the most powerful. The sheep god. But other months of the year, there were other gods that they served. There was a cow god, there was the fish god, and all the other gods that they had. So according to some, Egyptians only didn't eat sheep meat, but according to others, they didn't eat any meat because they served all animals. And they were vegetarian. So therefore, Egyptians could not eat together with Jews. So this was a funny thing. Yosef was separate, and it was clear that Yosef is not Egyptian. And the brothers ate separately. He gave them portions, Pasuk 34, and Binyamin's portion was 5 times as much as the portion of any of them. He again wanted to show certain preference to Binyamin, but at the same time, it would serve later to scare them, because later he would accuse Binyamin of stealing, and then they would actually see that he showed Binyamin extra attention. So they would understand that it's not Binyamin's fault, it's all Yosef's accusation, false accusation, and they would understand that there's no purpose to argue against him. Yosef made a decision. He wants Binyamin to be his slave. Nothing can change. And now this was the test. Will they let it be, or will they risk their life to protect Binyamin? Page 247, chapter 44. He instructed the one in charge of his house, fill the man's sacks with as much food as they can carry. Again, put their money into each man's sack, and my silver goblet place in the mouth of the youngest one's sack. And that's what happened. And as soon as they left his palace, Yosef said to the one in charge of his house, get up, chase after them, and accuse them of stealing, and bring them back. So Pasuk 6, he overtook them, and they said to him, why do you say such a thing? It would be sacrilegious for your servants to do such a thing. Look, we brought you the money that we found last time. So you see, we're honest. Why would we take anything from you? And Menashe says in Pasuk 10, the one with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall be exonerated. So they opened their sacks, and again they were surprised to see money in each sack. And on top of that, and the goblet was found in Binyamin's sack. They rent their garments, they understood that they are about to lose Binyamin, and they returned to the city. Pasuk 16, Yehuda said to Yosef, what can we say to my Lord? How can we speak? How can we justify ourselves? We are ready to be slaves to my Lord, both we and the one in whose hand the goblet was found. But Yosef replied, the man in whose possession the goblet was found, only he shall be my slave. As for you, go in peace to your father. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to see that Yehuda argues against Yosef and says, no, let Binyamin go. Which is surprising. Just now, Yehuda said, we are ready to be slaves, both we and the one in whose hand the goblet was found. He is offering him, family should be slaves. But when Yosef says, no, I don't need all of you, just give me one, Binyamin, he says, no. I guess it was okay for him if the whole family becomes slaves, because then it's clear that we can't do anything. We're slaves. But if he lets the entire family go and only keeps Binyamin, how can Yehuda come to Yaakov and say, we left Binyamin over there? If you are free, you have to do everything to get him out of there. And Yosef knew that. And that's what he wanted to see. The fact that he offers all of them to be slaves, that's not the proof. But when I can send them free, and they can return home safely, and they will risk their life for Binyamin, that will prove to me that they're not against children of Rachel, that whatever happened, it was my part also, and that now there is unity among them, and they do defend each other. And that's what happened, as we're going to learn next week, that brothers defended defended Binyamin, and they were ready to fight. And Yosef knew how powerful they were. He knew that they destroyed the city of Shechem, only 2 of them, and he knew that they participated in many other wars, as Midrash describes how Yaakov and his 10 sons fought so many wars, which is surprising that we read about it in the Midrash exactly at the time of Chanukah, how only a few Jews fought against great armies. It's not in the Chumash, but in the Midrash speaks about how during Yaakov's travels back home, he was fighting against great armies. And just like in the times of Chanukah, God helped them, and only 11 people with some servants, they were able to wipe out entire armies. So Yosef understood that he cannot prolong the test. If he pressures them a little bit more, they're going to become violent and they're going to destroy Egypt. And even if not destroy, they're going to create great massacre. And plus, he didn't want that. He knew their temper. He knew that they're not going to give in. He only wanted to see that they are committed. And as soon as he saw that, he calmed them down and said, don't worry, I'm Yosef. It was just a test. Now, connecting this parsha to Chanukah, when Yosef invited them to his home, right, it says, Utvoach tevach v'hachen, slaughter meat and prepare feast. And in Chumash, the last letter het of the tevach and v'hachen contains all the letters of Chanukah. Het, vav, hey, chav, nun. This is on page 242. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in the middle of the page. It says the words Tvoach tevach ve'achen, and the letter het of tevach, vav, hey, chav, nun. Exact letters of Chanukah. So that alludes that Chanukah is going to happen during this time of the year. Also, it alludes that he tells them slaughter meat and have a feast. So that tells us that on Chanukah we should have a festive meal every day of Chanukah. And at the end of this parsha, it tells us usually how many sentences are there in each parsha. But at the end of this parsha, not only it says that there are 146 sentences in this parsha, it tells us also how many words are in this parsha. This is the only parsha that ever does that, surprisingly. And it says there are 2,025 words in this week's portion. I mean, you can go home and count it and let me know.
Where is it written exactly? I don't see.
You see, in Hebrew, there's the last line over here, and it says Kuf Mem Vav Pesukim, the small letters at the end of the parsha, which means 146 Pesukim, and it explains what it means, and then it says at the end V'teivot, and how many words? Alpaim Chavhei, 2025. I mean, soon we're going to come to year 2025, but that's not what it means. Go to the English commentary on the next page. It's the next to the last paragraph. Only in this sidra means the parsha, is the mnemonic provided for the number of words. In this case, 2025. This alludes to Chanukah, which usually falls. You see where it is?
No, where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right here. Okay.
This alludes to Chanukah, which usually falls in the week of Mikeitz. On Chanukah, we light a new ner, a new candle, for each one of the 8 nights. The numerical value of the Hebrew word ner means candle. Nun is 50 and resh is 200. So together it's 250. So if you multiply 250 by 8, how much is it? Accordingly, the 8 lights of Chanukah give a total of 2,000. Right? Where did 25 come from? Chanukah begins on the 25th day of Kislev. Today is 24th day of Kislev. tonight is going to be 25th day of Kislev. Thus, 2025 is an allusion to the 8 lights of Chanukah and the date of Chanukah.
Amazing.
So we should all have a happy Chanukah, and this holiday should give us light for the whole year, light of Torah, light of spirituality, and we should, B'ezrat Hashem, see Mashiach coming this year.
Amen.